Welcome to Simple Fill Digitizing in SewArt. This video is the third in my series of videos on learning to use the SewArt digitizing program. When digitizing a design, you will have several decisions to make which will affect your final stitch file and how your design will appear when it's stitched. The purpose of this video is to help you understand what those decisions are and to help you make choices that will lead you to your desired outcome for your design. In this video, we will digitize the 3 images that we worked with in the second video of the series with simple fill stitching. Along the way, I will explain what the seemingly mysterious settings on the stitch toolbar mean, what seed points are and why they matter, how you can change the angle of your fill pattern and explain why you might want to. I will also show you how you can easily change these settings after you have created your stitch file. If you've watched video 2 of this series, Preparing Images for Digitizing in SewArt, you'll recognize the image that's on the screen. This is our villain that we have previously done a lot of work to reduce the number of colors and to clean up the image. And now we are going to actually go ahead and digitize this image. If you remember in that video, I decided that I was not going to stitch this red background and I was just going to stitch the villain figure. I had done some previous looking on this design and I decided that I'm going to do just a little more artwork just so that I can make it a little more distinct in some of the features of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate this mustache area here from his coat. I'm going to do that just by using my eraser tool and zooming this in. So I'm going to go down here and zoom this in a very, very large amount. And remember that this eraser tool stays the same size regardless of how much I zoom in. So I'm going to zoom in a whole bunch here. And I'm going to go ahead and pick a different color so that I can isolate this particular area. I'll go ahead and pick purple. And it's going to be very difficult to see this eraser tool on this black, but if you see right here in this little area of red between the mustache and his coat and his face, that's where my eraser tool is. And I'm going to just kind of extrapolate in my mind where that little bit of mustache goes, and I think his mustache goes over the top of his coat. And I'm just going to draw a line and make sure that it goes all the way through. And now I need to also isolate this from this other black. I had actually taken this image and done some pre-video work on it to decide how I wanted to digitize it so that I could make this quick and easy for you guys to see. And I decided this is what needed to be done. And we need to go up here and separate that from his ear, and we need to also separate it right here. I guess we need to separate here too as well. Now that I have all of the areas of black separated here, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my eraser tool, and I'm going to use my bucket fill. And I'm going to fill the mustache with the same color of purple. That gives me a separate color for his mustache, which allows me to digitize it in a different color stop as well as a different fill pattern. So now that that is done, I'm going to go ahead and isolate this little area over here as well. And I'm going to go back to my eraser tool. So I'm going to go and pick up the purple. And the mustache comes from behind his nose, so I want to make sure I leave an outline around the nose. So I'm going to very slowly, very carefully draw this line here so that I've separated that nose outline from the mustache. And then I will come back up here and I'll use my bucket fill. And I'll pick the purple again and fill that. That allows me to use a different fill pattern for the mustache and keep it separate, a separate color stop from the outline and the rest of it. I also decided that I wanted to use a different pattern on the hat just to kind of give it a little bit more texture. So I'm going to, again, use this eraser tool, but I'm going to use a different color. And I'm going to separate the hat brim from the hat itself. And I'm just going to draw this line, just kind of imagining in my mind where that line would go. Right there. And then you'll also see that we have over here, we have black that attaches from the brim to his hair. So we're going to want to separate that as well. And this is not something that you would need to do. This is just a little more chance to be a little more creative with it. That separates that. And now I'm going to fill with my bucket tool that hat brim with the aqua color. I don't really need to change the hat color. You're probably going to want to go and change the color stops later when you get the digitizing done. You can change the hat color if you want to, just for your own use, but it's really not necessary, and you'd have to change that color back later in your editing program, or just change your threads in your machine when you got to that area. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the auto sew feature just to show you how it works really quickly. I just clicked the stitch image button up here. This is also available somewhere up here on the, I never even use this up here. I always use the icons. It's under tools, convert to stitches. But I just use the little sewing machine. I am using version 1.9.2, which is brand new. And in the previous video, you'll remember that I said to close some of these tools, you had to click the X in the corner. There is now an OK button, which will turn it off as well. You can also just toggle the button on and off. So whatever works best for you will be just fine. So if I'm going to do auto sew image, you would just click the auto sew image button, and it gives you an opportunity to not stitch your background or any color that's in the design that you do not want it to stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and choose red as the transparent color because I don't want that to stitch. I'm going to click set transparent color, and when I come down into my design, you can see that my mouse pointer has changed to an eyedropper. And you just click anywhere in that color, and that sets that color to not stitch, and it automatically just goes ahead and stitches it. And you'll see that we get a message here that says auto sew is finished, and you just click OK, and then you would save it. But you'll see that what happens here, everything has exactly the same setting, and it's kind of boring. You will not have the opportunity to change the order the things stitch in or any of the attributes to them as well. I fully recommend using the manual stitch creation. You'll have a lot more opportunity to be creative and be precise in how these things stitch. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and use this clear stitches button, and you'll see all the color stops over here for this particular design. I'm going to click the clear stitches button, and it takes me right back to starting over. So I want to have some control over how this ends up stitching out, and I have played with the design and I've made some notes. Using a scrap piece of paper and just kind of laying out how you want it to go, what order you want things to stitch in, I think will make things a little easier for you. I'm going to go ahead and reduce this back down to a size where it all fits on the screen here so everybody can see it. There, we have the whole thing on the screen. And I kind of planned this out, so I have everything in order here, and I'll explain as I go along. The first part I'm going to stitch is going to be the nose. And the reason I'm doing that is you tend to want to, at least in my opinion, to have things stitched from the center out somewhat so that you don't have something from the top coming down to where it's already been stitched and you end up with a little pucker in your fabric or things don't line up right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch his nose, and I've already determined I'm going to use a separation of 3, and I'm just going to leave the length as 20, and I will go over those settings here in just a moment. And I've decided that I want this to stitch at an angle of 45 degrees. So I'm going to use the little arrows here to navigate through and get that set at 45. Oops, hit the right click accidentally there. So I'm going to go ahead and decide where I want this to seed from. The seed point is wherever you click this needle is where your stitches will begin. This can be important for eliminating or minimizing jumps within your design. And I think I am going to go right down here, and this will either end it over here or over here. Hopefully it ends right here because I'm going to do this little part of his face next. And that, unfortunately, you don't really have any control over, and you can't really tell it until you actually take it in and look at it in the stitch simulator in SewArt Pro. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that area with stitches. You'll see on the side over here that I have a color stop, and it gives the color, a little color swatch, and it gives all of the settings that you used for that particular section of the design. The reason I chose the 45-degree angle is his nose, I kind of want it to look like his nose kind of comes out this way, and it'll give a little more dimension to it. And as I mentioned, I would explain these settings up here. The separation is going to affect how dense your design is. If you hover over the little up and down arrows over here, you'll see a little hint up here. Separation between the rows or columns of stitches. What this means is this is the distance between each row of stitches. So the larger the number, the less dense the design will be. The smaller the number, the more dense, the less space there will be. And I'm kind of working with a separation of 3 that seems to work pretty well for me. The next setting is the length. This is the distance from one stitch to the next within that same row. This is the stitch to stitch length. The setting of 20 seems to work really well. What you don't want to do is end up with a length that is so long that your stitches are really long and subject to snagging. You also don't want a length that's really short because that's going to increase the stitch count. And each time, and that basically means that each time the needle goes through the fabric, it's going to count that. So if you have a little bit longer stitch length, you'll have fewer stitches to actually stitch. The angle over here, this goes from 90 degrees through 0, and then when it gets to 0, it starts going to negative numbers. And I will be inserting a image into this video that shows how all of these angles are. And I would suggest pausing the video when you get to that, taking a screenshot of that, and then you can just put it right into Microsoft Paint or just about any other image editor that you can use. Save that image, and this will be a handy little tool for you to be able to visualize what those angles are. I actually have a little hand-drawn one on my desk right now that I am actually using when I digitize, and basically it's a compass, but you have to know where 0 is. 0 in this case is the horizontal line. 90 degrees is the vertical line. And 90, I'm just kind of illustrating here with my little pen or my little needle pointer, 90 being at the top, going down to 0 at the horizontal, going to -0 or negative 90, sorry, at the bottom. So you have negative angles here, positive angles here. And you could also use the angles that are on the opposite side of that particular angle. I will explain further about that when we actually do some editing of these settings in the stitch list. But when you see the image of this little compass that I've come up with, I think it will make it a lot more clear. It took me quite a while to figure this all out, and being able to have something that I can just glance at and go, that's the angle I want, what number is it? Then I can just enter that number, and then I can know that I've got something that's close to what I want, rather than have to poke my way through and trial and error. It makes it a little bit quicker for me. So I've decided that one's going to be 45 degrees. And hopefully, if I'm lucky, it ended up ending somewhere up in here. And now I'm going to do the rest of his face. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to, oops, I forgot to change my angle. So I've decided ahead of time that I wanted this to be at a 0. So I'm going to bring this back down to 0. This will be straight across, left to right. And I'm still leaving all the rest of my settings the same. And I'm going to click right up in here, and you can see the little hatch design here shows that it's been filled with stitches. I now have a color stop 2. And I'm just going to continue. The rest of his face wants to be in a 0 angle from what I decided. And I'm going to click that section. And then I'm going to jump over here to do his ear. And that comes around to here. These are all his teeth, so I don't want to do that. And this is his upper lip. So we'll do his upper lip and a seed point probably right about there. And you'll also see on the image that the little hatching kind of imitates the direction that the stitches are taking as well. And then this is his neck and his chin. Do that, and that is all of his face. Then I'm also going to do, while I've got that same color, I'm going to go ahead and do both of his hands. There's one of them, and that would come down to here. And if I come over here and start, likely it stops somewhere over here and it will jump over into here. And if I'm lucky, I won't have to, when I stitch the black, I won't have to cut that stop. It can just go over the top of it. So now I've got his hands and his face. And now I'm going to go back up here and do that little bit of shading in that darker tan color. And I've also determined I want this to stay at angle 0, which is where I am. So all I have to do is click the sections. And I'm going to come up here and click it there. That takes care of the shadow of his hat. And then I'm going to do this part around his eye. And it should come down to here. And I guess we'll go ahead and do this from the top. That does that part. And then we have that little part underneath his nose. And you may need to zoom this in further for very small areas, but that's certainly okay. I was able to click on it and it filled it with stitches. Now that we've got all of the skin done, we'll go back up and we'll do his eyes. And I decided ahead of time I was still going to use the 0 angle. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do that one. And that one ends here. And you'll notice I'm not just clicking in the center of these. If I do that, then my stitching is going to start in the center. And what's going to happen if I do that is it'll stitch one direction or the other from that starting point. And then it will have to jump back down here and finish it. And we don't want that to happen. So we want to be up near the edge where it can go from one side of that area to the next. I think a lot of people probably get frustrated with all the jumps and everything. And likely it's because they're just clicking in the center of that area instead of planning out where they want their stitches to go. Now we have his teeth. And for his teeth, I thought I would do something a little bit different. Starting from left to right, I've kind of made notes and decided on some different angles for these. So from left to right, the first two, I'm going to do it so that they stitch vertically, just to give a little bit of different texture. And if you remember in my description earlier and you can refer to the little compass that I'm going to post on the video, that 90 is vertical. You could also use negative 90. I'm just going to use positive. So I'm going to change this to 90 degrees. And I want the first two teeth to be 90 degrees. So I'm going to start over here, and I'm starting on the side because I'm going from left to right. And if I started over here, then I would definitely have a jump to deal with. So I'm hoping to eliminate jumps by doing this. You can see that that looks like it's going vertical, which is good. So this is going to either be ending here or here, likely. And we'll just take a guess, and we'll do that second tooth, and that's going to either end here or here. And tooth number 3, I decided I wanted to go at an angle that kind of mimicked this diagonal line. And looking at my little compass, I decided that that number was negative 67. So I'm going to put that in. And we know it either ended here or here. And we'll just hope it was up here. And I filled that. And this now kind of follows that little bit of an angle. And for the last two teeth, which are very similar in angle, I'm going to use negative 45. Oops, wrong direction. Nope. I always seem to grab the wrong direction on the up and down arrow for whatever reason. So it either ended here or here. We'll take a guess. And we'll click that one. It either ended here or here. And now those teeth are all filled in with stitches. Now we have some more white, which is the tip of his collar and the front of his shirt and his cuffs. For the collar, I decided let's also do that negative 45, so it'll make the stitches run this way. Give a little bit of texture to it. Very small area, but a little bit can make a big difference. And for the shirt, I decided I kind of wanted it to go this way, as if the shirt had a texture to it. So I will go ahead and change this. I decided a positive 60 was what I wanted for this. And we'll go ahead and, since this one did here, we'll go here and we'll go here. And hopefully our jumps won't be such that they won't be covered up with by the black. Now he has the cuffs, and I decided I wanted those. If this were a shirt and this were a kind of a design in the shirt, this would be vertical and the cuffs would be going around the cuff, and this is going around the cuff. So I'm going to change this to positive 90 so it goes vertically. There's that one. And start right there. And the cuffs are done. You can see how quickly this goes. Even when you're not using the auto sew is obviously much faster, but I'm getting the opportunity to really create here rather than just, okay, I've got a design that will stitch. And I think that's probably a lot of the fun of digitizing, as well as the creativity of digitizing. For the hat brim, I'm going to do this so that it's vertical. So I have my 90 degrees here, which is vertical. And we'll go ahead and start one end. Remember, this is going this way, so I want to start on one end or the other, and either at the top or the bottom. So I'll click it right there. And remember, this is where the very tip of that little needle pointer is that you're clicking. So if you make a mistake, all you have to do is just remove the color stop, and I can show you how to do that in just a few minutes. For the hat, I'm going to do something much different. I'm going to make this so that it goes horizontally. So I'm going to bring this back down to 0. Now I have it 0, but I'm going to change the fill pattern a little bit. Up here at the top, you have the fill button, but you can also change the different patterns. I have decided, just by looking at what I've got here, that I think I want to try number 75, the zigzag. And if you hover over this, you will see a little design right here kind of previewing it for you. And I think I just want this to kind of be a little chevron type design. So I'm going to select that particular pattern right there, and I'm going to use that for my fill. And remember what I said about coming back down, digitizing back down to your design, that you could end up with a little problem with if your fabric isn't tight enough in the hoop or whatever. So we want to go from the center out for this, just to make sure that there's no issues with the finished design when it's stitching. And it doesn't matter if I start over here or over here. I'll just pick a spot right here and I'll fill that. And you'll see the little hatched design actually changes to indicate it's a different pattern. If this were zoomed in more, it probably would look a little more different. Then I'm going to come back down here, and now that all of this is filled in, I'm going to go ahead and do all of this black outlining right here. You always do your outline last. If you don't, these stitches that you do, your fill stitches, are going to end up covering part of your outline, and it will look muddy, or you won't be able to see your outline very well at all. So I'm going to I'm not going to do any kind of an outline stitch. I'm just going to use a regular fill for this. I'm going to go ahead and go back up to that default 19, which is the same thing we used for the entire face. And I'm going to do an angle of 0. And I'm going, since this is going to be a big jump, it doesn't matter if I start over here or over here. I'll just start right up here. And that may not have been the best idea. I got all of this, and I got his coat, which is fine because the coat I wanted to be 0. Otherwise, I would have had to have separated it like I did the mustache. But now I've got this little part up here. So let me click undo. And unfortunately, undo doesn't actually undo that. So I'll need to come over here, and I can show you how to, and I actually kind of screwed this part up too. I'm going to actually delete that color. If you click on it, any of these colors over here, it'll show you what little area that color stop refers to. So this is the one that I want to remove, and I'm just clicking my left mouse button on the little color swatch, and I'm going to select delete color, and that removes it. This, I think, is just a little bit of an error in how things are displaying, because I still have that color and I still have that design and I still have my hat. And to get the design back, I just clicked on one and I clicked close menu. So we'll just ignore this. I'm sure it will be just fine. So I still have my default fill stitch, and I still have my angle of 0. Let's see what happens. I think it would make sense if we started maybe down here, and that would bring it up here, and then we can fill the rest. And it really wouldn't matter. It's just how it ends up having the jumps. And then this would have ended up here, and we can, I like longer jump stitches because they're easier to trim. So let's just go ahead and jump it right over here. So either way you would have done that, it wouldn't have made any difference, but it gave me an opportunity to show you that the undo button doesn't work for when you're doing the stitches. I have always just used this. So ignore what I said about using the undo button when you're actually creating stitches, because it's not working as I thought it would. The only thing we have left on this design is this mustache. And remember that I separated that, giving me the opportunity to make it a different color or to make a different fill stitch. And I predetermined that I wanted to use a different fill stitch. I'm going to still use the angle of 0, and I'm going to click the little drop down box here, and I've decided that number 28 is what I wanted to use. And I don't think it's going to make it. We're going to have a jump stitch no matter what we do. So I'm going to go ahead and click from the center. So it stitches from the center out so that we don't have any issues later. And click that one. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click that one. And you can see that gives a very distinct indication that it's a different texture. So at this point, this design has been digitized. What we need to do now is we need to save it so that we actually have the stitch file. So what I'm going to do is I always use a save as rather than just save. So I click on File and Save As, or you could click on this button also. I choose to do File Save As because I'm a little more apt to be careful as to which, rather than which button I'm clicking. Quite often when I'm working in a word processing program, I just click the Save button automatically. I don't always think to go to the Save As. So if I do File, then I'm paying attention to what I'm clicking. So you can do it however works for you. I'm going to click Save As. And this is my folder that I had saved all of these images once I had cleaned them up. And I'm just going to go ahead and save it in this particular folder. And you'll notice that we have a box that says Save Image File. Right now, we're not saving the stitch file, we're saving the image. And in this case, I did make some changes to this. So if I want to make changes to my digitizing later, I'm probably going to want to have that. So I'm going to go, even though I've got, this is the one that I loaded when I started working, and I want to keep that just in case, I'm going to go ahead and change the file name. And I'm just going to say modified. And you do want this TIF, tagged info file. This is the file format that SewArt will digitize from. And then I'm going to click save. That will save that into that folder. You can also change the location if you wish. Now you see you get another box that says Save Embroidery File. This is going to be your stitch file. This is in the same folder, Images Ready for Digitizing. You can change where you save it if you wish. And it's going to automatically give the stitch file the same name as your image file. If you want to change it, you can. And I happen to have a Brother machine, so I always save as PES. You just need to drop that down and you can choose whatever format you need. This design scale factor, this will affect your finished stitch file size. Now you remember back in the second video that I decided this was going to be a 5x7 file. I've already changed that, so I don't want to change this here. If you had not changed that, you can change this to 0.5, would make it half the size of the actual image. You can change it to 1.5, 1.25, whatever you'd like, and that will adjust the file to whatever size you've chosen. What you can't do is enter, I want it to be 5x7 inches. You would have to figure out how many times or less the design is and what you actually have it saved as right now. So I find it easier for myself just to save the image file as the size I want the stitch file to be before I start digitizing. This next part, the minimum stitches in a stitch block, I just always leave that as 4. You cannot go lower than 4. This just basically will eliminate any color stops. This will be something that probably will be more useful if you're doing auto sew. It'll eliminate any of these color stops over here that have less than 4 stitches. That's basically all that does. And I always uncheck this. I wish there was a way that this could be default set so that it does not join your colors. I prefer to, if I'm going to join my threads, I prefer to do it in SewArt Pro just before I stitch. This will give me the opportunity later to change a color on a different section. And you remember there's a lot of black, there's a lot of white sections. What if I wanted to have an off-colored tooth, for instance? If I join all of these adjacent white colors, I won't have the opportunity to do that without splitting the design in SewArt Pro. So I do it just as I'm ready to stitch. So I always uncheck this. And another thing that, for whatever reason, does not have a default setting is your thread brand. If you have a stash of one particular kind of thread, or you know what threads you're going to be using, you can have it give you the color numbers for that particular brand of thread. I happen to have a large stash of Sulky rayon thread, and this is what I'm going to use. Unfortunately, right now, there is not a way to default this to whatever thread you use the most. Once you have all these settings, all you have to do is click Save, and you'll watch up here, and you'll see all those little sections start to appear in the order that I stitched them, and you'll see numbers start to appear over here on the side. Those are the numbers of stitches for each of those color stops. When it's all done, it will give you a message here saying that it's done, saving it, and you'll see that we do have a little issue here with the hat brim, and that's okay, we'll fix that. So go ahead and click OK. There's nothing else you can do there. And you'll see over here, remember the aqua color was the hat brim, and what I did with the undo button kind of screwed that up, and that's okay, we'll fix it. You'll see it only has 37 stitches, and that's most likely right around here where the aqua is still showing through that black. So what we'll do is we'll just go through and we'll eliminate that color stop. And this was not an intentional, oops, I right clicked it instead of left. This was not an intentional mistake, but it's a good one so that I can illustrate to you what to do if this happens. I'm going to go and I just left clicked that color, the little color swatch, and I get this little menu like I had before. I'm going to click delete color. And sometimes you have to do it more than once for whatever reason. And that's odd. I'm not sure exactly why that area is still like that. So I'm going to close menu. Oh, it just it undid the I know what it did. When I did the separation here, that was actually painted in, and then the bucket was used to fill this. The bucket was the last thing that I did, and it undid the bucket. So basically all I need to do is I need to exit the stitch mode. I've already saved it, so no, I don't. I need to come back up to my bucket. I need to grab the color, fill in his hat again. And this is okay too, because it's going to give me the opportunity to show you something else. I'm going to close the bucket mode, and I'm going to go back into my stitch mode by clicking the sewing machine. And then it says it's been edited. Do you want to restitch the appropriate areas? So I'm going to say yes. And actually, it's going to make me restitch the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back out of this. And remember, I saved that stitch file, and I saved the image as well. I'm going to save this image, save the image file, and I want to replace this modified one. And yes, I do want to overwrite it because remember, I needed to fix the hat brim. So I'm going to say yes. And I'm not sure if I need to reload the image or not, but I'm going to go ahead and do so. And this is the one I want. Now when I click the sewing machine icon, it will say a stitch list for this image was previously saved. And remember, that list of all those little color stops over here is what was here. So yes, I do want to reload it. And you'll notice that we now have the aqua and we have an aqua color stop, but that aqua color stop only has the 37 stitches. So I deleted it, and I'm going to zoom this in a little bit so it's a little easier for you to see. And I'm going to go back to my little notes that I made, and the hat brim was positive 90. So we'll run that up to 90, and it was just the default fill, so I'm going to go back to default, and that's number 19. And now I can come over here, and I started it right here, and I can fill that back in, and you'll notice that I now have the aqua, but it's down here. Now I didn't want it to be there, and we did have it right before I stitched the black. So there's an easy way to move this. You can do this in SewArt Pro also, but if you want to move it in this list, you can do that. All you need to do is click Shift on the keyboard, hold it down, click your left mouse button on that color, and you'll see that my mouse pointer changed a little bit. It has a little thing like it's grabbed it. I want to drag this up, and I'm going to drop it on top of the one that I want it to be before. So I unclick the mouse button, and I release the Shift key after that. You can see now that this color is over here. If you were to want to drag a color down in the list, you drag it and put it on top of the one that you want it to be after. So dragging it up, you put it on the one you want it to be before. Dragging it down, you put it on the one you want it to be after. So now that we have this added back in, let's go ahead and do our save as. And I've already saved that image file, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel through that because I already have that image. Remember, because I reloaded it. And I'm going to replace that one that I did before because I know there was a mistake in it. And I'm going to go ahead and uncheck this again. I still have Silky Rayon. Sometimes it stays, sometimes it doesn't. So just check your thread type if you care. Some thread brands do not have a large number of colors, and it chooses the one closest to what your image has. And now I'm just going to go ahead and click the Save button. And it's warning me it's already there, but are sure you want to replace it? And I do want to replace it. And here it's going through and it's creating all those stitches all over again. When the aqua, we'll make sure. There they are. So we now have stitches for that aqua color. And it says it's been saved. So we'll go ahead and click OK. And while this is up here, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at it in SewArt Pro. And there's our modified villain. I'm going to open it. And you can see all of my color stops are separate. If I want to, within SewArt Pro, I can join those all together. This gives me the opportunity to do whatever editing I'd like to do. We'll go ahead and zoom this in. I do have the texture off right now. And you'll see we have all of our colors. I can scroll this down so you can see that. And I can easily change that turquoise to be black. And I happen to know 1005 in my thread brand is black. So I can just change that easily enough. So I'm not worried about what those colors are. I'm going to go ahead and show you what this looks like in texture view. And you'll see that we have an interesting little texture in his hat. And the brim kind of stands out a little bit because it's got that vertical stitching. I have a little different texture in the mustache, and all of the different stitch directions kind of make it an interesting design. So we'll go ahead and close our villain. We have made a change, but I'm not going to worry about saving it. I'll go back through and do that later. And we'll go ahead and go back to our SewArt. And the villain is done at this point. And we've actually covered quite a bit of the information that needs to be covered within the villain. So don't use your undo button when you're actually creating stitches. We just both learned something together. When you save an image and your file, your stitch file, you're going to receive several different files in your save. You'll have the TIF, which is the image. You're going to have whatever file format you've chosen for your machine, such as PES. You're going to receive a text file, which is going to have information about the colors and so forth. And you're also going to receive a file that is .saf, S like Sam, A like Apple, F like Frank. Remember when I had to reload my image and I reloaded this stitch file over here, the stitch list? That SAF file is where that stitch list is kept. So you want to make sure you save that unless you are absolutely sure you're done digitizing with that and you don't want to go back through and rescue anything from the stitch list or change it. If you delete it, you'll have to redigitize things. You will not have access to changing any item of that particular digitizing. So make sure you save that, and they all need, I believe they all need to be within the same folder so that they can refer to each other. Also, we'll go ahead and go over a couple of items up here as well. We've only been using fill so far. In one of the other designs, we will use some outline, and we're just going to do very, very simple stuff here. There's several different types of patterns up here, and you can just preview them just by scrolling over them. So play with those, definitely. And remember that the angle, and you'll see this in the next design, the angle that you choose is going to greatly change how some of those patterns look in your designs. So make sure you're thinking about that when you're choosing those. Also, you have the option of having underlay or not. I recommend always using the underlay setting. The reason for that is you don't build a house without a foundation, and that helps also tack your fabric down to your stabilizer, and it keeps things from shifting on you, and it provides support for those stitches once they're made. Sometimes the underlay is, you look at the way it stitches and you think somebody was drunk when they made this. But the underlay stitches are still there. They sometimes do jump around and they're not always completely uniform, and they're under the stitches. It doesn't matter. So I would recommend, unless you have a special reason for not using underlay, use your underlay. Don't worry about so much that it's going to be too dense or whatever. You can always change that over here. The Autofill color also is an interesting little part of this. If you want to, you can check this, and when you check, or when you click one part of a color, if there's several instances like the white and you want them all to be the same, you can't, and you don't care what order they stitch in, you can click Autofill color, click one area of that color, and it's going to fill all of that color with the chosen stitches. And we already mentioned the Autofill image, and we already went over these settings here. And it looks like when I reloaded my design, I ended up with the separation being 2, and that is the case here. You can make changes within this list over here. So even though I accidentally chose the separation of 2, which if you see this column separation, most of them are 3s, and I have some that are 2s. So at some point, either I accidentally clicked on this, or when I reloaded it to redo something, it got changed, or it defaulted back to 2, which is the default, by the way. And in another design, I will show you how to change all those. So let's go ahead and we'll close this design, and we'll go ahead and bring up our next design, which is going to be our dinosaur. If you remember, that one was one that we did in our previous session, and this one was not a good image to start with at all. And we're going to look and see what we can come up with for this little guy. And let's just click on here quickly. Too far. Okay, so here's our dinosaur. And the first thing I'm going to do is just a little more artwork. I've decided that since the outline is really not very good here at all, I'm going to go ahead and remove the outlines from these spots. So I'm going to go ahead and come up here. I'm going to use my eraser tool to do this because it's a little more, actually, you know what? I'm going to use the bucket tool. We'll see how that does. I'll go ahead and I'm not going to explain a whole lot of this since this was all covered in the previous video. Just bear with me while I fix this. I didn't want to just go ahead and change it and then have you wonder what happened with it. So just bear with me just for a couple seconds here while I get these all cleaned up. And then I'm also going to change the color of the spots as well, and then they'll stand out a lot better. Whoops. Have to be very precise with that little drip of paint. I suppose if I zoom this in a little bigger, it would be a little easier, but I'm almost done. And I very well might want to zoom it in when I do the other part that I'm going to do. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and just make this purple. This will also make these spots just a little bigger as well. Okay, and I'm also going to enhance the outline around the eye and on the nose. For that, I'm going to need to zoom in considerably. And remember, this little tool, this little eraser tool that I'm using will allow the much finer detail that I need here. You can see this outline does not connect around this eye, and that's going to cause an issue when I go to make the outline, and we don't want to have issues when we do the digitizing. So I'm just touching this up a little bit so it's very definitely outlined. And then I'm just going to draw this in a little bit more. And I'm going to fix this eye part a little bit. And just touch up this little spot right here, and I think we'll be good to go. Okay. That was, oops, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit right here as well. Oops. If I pick up the right color, it would be helpful. We just want to make sure that these details end up being a little more precise because the details are what really make your design. Okay, now that I am done with that, I can zoom this back out and turn off our tool. And now we're ready to start digitizing. And I'm going to do something a little bit outside of the box from what I told you on the previous design, where you always want your outline to be last. In playing with this earlier and deciding exactly what I wanted to do when I digitized it, I discovered that for this outline on this one is, the outline is so poor, and I was finding that if I tried to digitize it last, it wasn't digitizing the whole thing. But I found that if I digitized it first, that it worked just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and go into stitch mode by clicking my little sewing machine icon. I'm going to move this up a little bit. So the first thing, I'm going to do this completely backwards of what I told you, and I'm going to explain how we're going to fix this later. I'm going to go ahead and do this brown outline. And remember, this is not a complete digitizing tutorial. This is just really basic fill. So I'm just going to do a very quick outline for this. I'm going to use outline center line, and I'm going to change it to a bean stitch. And you'll notice when you use the bean stitch and the running stitch that this little area right here for the height is not active. I'm actually clicking on those. They're grayed out compared to this one. The reason for that is that there is no height to these particular stitches. They are linear, so it's just literally a thread going from one place to another rather than making a width to it. The width is only the width of the thread. So we're going to go ahead and change the length, because this will be the stitch to stitch length. And I've decided that 15 worked just about perfectly for me in just playing with this earlier. And I'm going to go ahead and just click in an area where it's a little bit heavier so I can make sure that I'm getting the right thing. And I've got my outline center line, my bean stitch, and I have my length. All I have to do is click, and you'll see now I have kind of a brown line all the way around my design, which is what I want. And then I'm going to go ahead and start digitizing the rest of it. And what we're going to do when we're done is we will move this color stop here. We're going to move it to the end so it does stitch last. In this case, I just need to digitize it first. So I've made some decisions just like I did with the villain earlier. And I've decided that I'm going to use a couple of different textures for this, different fill patterns. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my fill, and I'm going to choose my first pattern here. And I've decided that I'm going to use fill number 51. And if you look at that particular pattern, see if I can get it back on, there we go. If you look at this little pattern right here on the screen, it kind of looks like scales. And what would be more perfect for a dragon or a dinosaur than to have scales? So I'm going to go ahead and use that one. And we've got that one selected. And I'm going to change my separation to 3. That would be what's controlling my density. And the length I'm leaving alone. And I want the scales to go this way. So I'm going to use -45. And I'm doing this just to illustrate something for you. Okay, we have -45, and according to our little compass, it should make the design go this direction. So I'm going to go ahead and go up here because I want it to stitch this direction. And I'm going to click, but you'll notice that the pattern runs the opposite way that we really want it to. Yes, it's diagonal, but you'll notice that the scallops are the wrong direction for the dinosaur. So in order to do that, and you'll find this with some of the different patterns in here, you may need to use the opposite angle on that compass. Now the opposite angle of -45 is 135. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to our stitch list, and you can change these, as I mentioned earlier. And we're going to type in under our angle column for that color, we're going to type in 135. And then I'm going to click over here to accept it, and you'll see that it changed it. Basically, it just rotated that design 180 degrees, or that pattern 180 degrees. So now we have our scales going the direction they really should be. They should be kind of flowing down his back rather than upwards. And then I'm going to go ahead and come up here and do the red. And I previously decided that I'm going to use a different pattern for that as well. And for this one, I'm going to use number 73, which is a zigzag, and that will kind of make little ribs in between all of this. And we want it to be at an angle. And just like this particular one, I discovered that this one needs to be at 45 to be correct, just because of the direction the fill pattern was made. So we'll get this up to 45 here. Oops. And we'll go ahead and we'll seed this right here. And you'll see that we have kind of a little ziggy-zaggy pattern going the direction that makes sense for this particular design. Do be careful when you are choosing different patterns for a design that you don't get too many different patterns in a design that it looks too busy. If I made all of these things all a different kind of busy pattern like this, it just would not look professional at all. So the rest of this, I'm just going to use the default fill. So we'll come back up here, and I'm going to go ahead and change that back to default, which is number 19. You'll become very familiar with that number. And previously I decided that I wanted this blue area to kind of look like it curves around, just like it would be if it was on a real dinosaur. So I decided that angle of 45 was going to be right, because that would kind of put it this direction. And as I mentioned earlier, you kind of want to plan these things so that they kind of stitch from the inside out. So I'm going to come back up here, and I'm going to seed this right up here. And now you'll see that we have that color and we have it angled this way. Now for the part of the belly in the blue, I want to change the angle so it kind of curves around. And just in playing with it, and you'll need to do this if you're going to do something similar, you'll need to practice and play around with it and see what it looks like. I decided an angle of 22 was correct for this. And I've changed that up top, and now I'm going to click this little area to seed that area. And that looks nice. It looks like it kind of curves around a little bit. And then for the tail, we want it to kind of come up this way. And that angle would be negative 45 according to our compass. So I'm going to go ahead and come down here and put in negative 45. And this is all just personal preference. You do whatever looks good to you and whatever you like. And you can see how all these stitches kind of look like they're kind of curving around for his underbody here. Now we're going to go ahead and do the inside of the legs on those back, the ones that are furthest from us. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use Autofill color just so that you can see this. And I do want this to be default. Again, as I said, I'm going to do everything else default. And I'm going to make this an angle of negative 67. And again, I just looked at my little compass and kind of came up with that looked like about the right angle for me. And I want to seed this somewhere in the middle so that it comes this way and stitches this direction. So I'm going to go ahead and when I click this one over here, if you watch this one, it will also fill that as well. And there they are. There's the two color stops. It actually does leave a color stop for each section. And then later you could always change those colors if you'd like. So I'm going to go ahead and turn Autofill color back off. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the tongue and all these little areas in here. So the tongue, I decided wants to go this way. And I determined that that was a negative 45. So we'll bring this back up to negative 45. And we'll put that right in there. And those go that way. So that's the way I wanted those. And we're going to go ahead and do all the rest of these as a 0. So we'll go ahead and get that back to 0. And at this point, it's just a matter of clicking all of those. And I guess I'll go ahead and use Autofill color for the purple spots. We'll start here, and that filled all those in. And I'll turn that back off. And then I'm just going to go ahead and fill in these other areas. There's the white, there's the red of the eye, there's the red of the nose. And the only thing we really have left to do here is the outline around the eye and around the nose. So we'll go ahead and we'll go back to our outline center line, and it brought our 15 back, and we still have bean stitch. And hopefully we won't have any issues with this wanting to stitch correctly. Okay, it looks a little funny there, but that's something that we can fix in SewArt Pro. I'm not going to worry too much about that. And we'll do around the nose, and that looks funny too. But as long as we have some stitches there, we can go ahead and fix it. Okay, so I've done that line, and around the nose, and it does look funny. And I've done around the eye. So at this point, this guy is pretty much done. But remember what I said about the fact that the colors needed to be changed. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring this outline so that it's at the end of the list. And we have this other brown down here, and that'll work out just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hold my shift key down on the keyboard. I'm going to click that color stop. And remember, when you're bringing it down, I'm holding that mouse button. You put it on top of the one that you want it to be after when you're coming downward. So I release my mouse button, release my shift key, and this one right here, if I click on it, is our outline. So we'll go ahead and close the menu. And I'm sure that we're going to want all the reds to stitch at the same time rather than having to rethread the machine with that color. And we definitely want the red to stitch after this green does, because if we don't, we'll kind of lose that red. So I'm going to go ahead and double check, and we do have the very first color stop being that green of the main body, and I'm not sure why it just changed that angle, but it does still say the angle here, so we're going to try it and see what happens. I'm not sure why the image changed, but it did. As long as the resulting stitch file is okay, that's all we care at this point. So I'm going to move these two reds up here, and I'm going to put them after this red. This is the eye and the nose. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to push my shift key down and hold it. Click on this number 19 and hold the mouse button down and drag it up, and I'm going to put it on top of the one that I want it to be before. Release my mouse button, release my shift key. And I'm just going to repeat that procedure for the other one, and that wants to go right there. And there we have everything pretty much in order the way we would like it to stitch. So at this point, we can go ahead and save it. So we'll do a save as. I did change my image, so I do want to save this so that if I need to come back and make some changes later, I can do that. I'm just going to add the word modified to my file name here, and I'm going to click save. And I don't want it to join the colors, and here it has changed my thread brand for whatever reason, same brand, different type. So I'm going to change that back to the thread that I want it to be, just for my own personal use. And you'll notice the file name has changed to what I change it to automatically, and I do want PES. And I have it in the folder that I want it to be, so I'm going to go ahead and save. And we'll watch as it stitches. And it does look like those scales go the correct direction. I'm not sure why the display was different. That is a little odd. So it's all finished saving it. We have stitches for all of our parts over here, and I'm going to click OK. Now we'll go ahead and we'll open the design in SewArt Pro. So here we are in SewArt Pro, and I have my Dinosaur open. I will zoom it in so we can look at it very closely. And you'll see that our stitch points for the little scale pattern, they are the correct direction. So that is working out okay. And actually the outline around the eye doesn't look too terribly bad. I need to adjust a few stitches and maybe add one or two more and possibly make those a little closer together. That's not a big deal to do. Over here, definitely will need some work. Again, not that big of a deal. We'll need to fix a couple things here in the mouth so that the little lines in the mouth look right. And it really doesn't look too bad considering this kind of image that it was originally. And you'll see there's a great big spot right here that stitched out strange, and a little spot right there. And remember, when you're adding or moving stitches, if you have a pattern, make sure that you follow that same pattern and put your stitch points in the same places to follow that pattern. Otherwise, your pattern's not going to look right. So here's another little spot that will need some touch up. And let's go ahead and we'll take a look at this in texture mode. And it doesn't look too bad. Let's go ahead and zoom it back out just a little bit so you can see the whole thing. And you can see, oh, there's definitely some work to do here. I'm not sure why that didn't fill in very well. But you'll see that the default stitching, changing those angles, kind of gives that kind of a rounded look to him. And you can see the scale pattern showing up here a little bit now too. And then the texture in the red part up here. So at this point, we'll go ahead and we'll close this and we'll move on to our next design. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our cartoon face. I'm going to go ahead and open that. And we have him up there. And this one's going to be a very, very simple, very, very quick digitizing. We're going to go ahead and go into stitch mode. And I want my underlay, and I want to change this. I decided that I wanted to do a texture on this as well, just for the yellow part. And I decided I wanted to use number 66, which is a triangle. And I decided I wanted that to go on an angle. So I'm going to go -22. And it's going to go at an angle going this way. So I'm going to go ahead and start right up here at the very, very top. I'm going to go ahead and click that. And it kind of gives us a little chevron design. And next we'll do the white. And I'm going to change this back to default. Remember, I don't want to get this too complicated with too many different patterns and everything. So just one pattern in this I think is just fine for what I would like. So I'm going to go ahead and change that back to default, and I'm going to change this back to 0. Oops, went too far. There. And I'm going to seed this at the bottom, because remember what I said about having it come stitch from one direction into something that you've already stitched. So I'm going to seed these both at the bottom. And I'm going to click right there, and that came up to there, but I'm going to go ahead and let it jump over to here, because remember I wanted to stitch away from where I've already stitched before. So now I have my eyes taken care of. And now that the eyes are done, I can do some eye outline. And this one I'm going to do outline center line again. And this time I'm going to use satin. Now remember I said on using the bean stitch and very likely on the running stitch as well, that this height adjustment was not active. When you use satin, satin has a width to it. And so now this is active again. And I've decided 15 was going to be a good height for this one. It's a fairly narrow satin. I'm not trying to make an applique or anything. So I want it fairly narrow because it's just an outline around this particular little area of the eyes. And the length, however, this is going to go all the way down to 2. With satin, the height refers to the back and forth width of the satin. The length is the distance between each of the stitches as it goes back and forth, as I'm pointing with my little needle pointer here. The smaller that number is, the closer together all those little stitches are. If you leave this a large number, you're going to have a zigzag stitch that looks very similar to what this pattern is here in the yellow. And again, that's all trial and error and personal preference and what you like. This is what I decided I wanted to use. With this, it doesn't really seem to matter where I click. I'm just going to click in a large area here. And you'll see that it showed me kind of a little bit of a satin stitch in gray, showing that that has created stitches, and I do have it over here. Now I'm going to go to the eyebrows, which I also decided I wanted to have satin, but the eyebrows are wider than this outline is. So I'm going to bump this up to about 25. And I still want them close together, otherwise I'm going to have a very loose zigzag. And we'll start over here, and it comes around. And you'll notice with satin that you are going to have to straighten out those stitches in SewArt Pro. There's just no way around that. And then the other eyebrow is done. And then we're going to do the remainder of the black, the pupils of the eyes and the mouth. We're just going to do that at a very simple fill stitch, default with a 0. And this one, there's stitches all around it, so it doesn't really seem to matter where you seat it as long as it's on one opposite end. And remember that this is going side to side, left to right. So we want to go at the top left or the bottom right to fill it in. Those two are filled in, and we'll start right here, and it will come right around that way. And that one is all taken care of. We've already shown you how to delete and move the colors within the stitch list, and we've already shown you how to change some of the settings over here. And that's pretty much about all there is to it. There is also a way that you can change multiple settings at once. And basically what you do is you click on the column header of what you want to change. And let's say I wanted to change my density for these last 3 black ones. I just click on that header and I get this little window. So my high color stop is number 7. That's the first one I want to change. That's what low and high means. So the low one is number 7 and the high one is number 9. And that allows you to select a range of which ones you want to change when you're doing multiples. And let's say I want to change that to a 4. So I want that 3, and that 3 to be a 4. Yes, you can change them individually. This is just another way to do multiples at once to make it a little quicker for you. Then you click OK, and you'll see that those 3 have changed to a 4. You can also do this for changing multiple different fill or outline settings, and you can also change the amount of pull compensation that your design has. When you're digitizing in SewArt, there's a built-in pull compensation of 2. And what this is basically is when you have 2 areas that come together, like this yellow and the black, when that stitches, the stitches will pull somewhat on the fabric and kind of scrunch the fabric. Not really, but it takes up a little bit of the fabric's width when you put those stitches in, because the stitches are tighter than the fabric is, and it will actually pull this direction. It'll pull this direction, and you might have a little gap. That little gap can sometimes be corrected by changing that pull compensation. And you can also make changes in SewArt Pro as well. But if you have done this and you've done a test stitch out and you go, okay, there's a gap here, you can go in and you can change the pull compensation of certain color stops within SewArt. The gap issue is not something you're going to be able to see in SewArt Pro. However, when you look at your design in SewArt Pro, you'll likely see that your yellow and your black overlap a little bit. And in my changing this here for the black, it'll be these last 3 black things that I changed or that I digitized, which are the eyes, the eyeballs, and the mouth. We'll actually save this and we'll go in and look at that so I can show that to you. So I'm going to go ahead and go save as. And I did not do any artwork but we'll just go ahead and save it. We'll overwrite it because I know I didn't change it. I'm not going to join my threads, and sulky rayon is what I want, and I'm going to save it, and it's creating the stitches now, and it's done, and it's been saved. Click OK, and now I'm just going to bring up SewArt Pro, and I'm going to open it, and we'll find my cartoon face design, and we'll open that. And here you can see how that texture plays. Now you can see that if I had another texture in the eyes or one in the mouth, it would just be too much. It would be way too busy. So I'm going to zoom this in. And right now I have the texture turned on so that you can see this. And you can see here's the satin around the eyes, the satin in the eyebrows, and then my very plain texture of the mouth and the eyes. But yet I have this texture here. I'm going to turn the texture off. And I'm going to zoom this in quite a bit. Okay. And I'm going to change that eye. And when you're working with white, here's a good little tip. If you can't see the stitches, like here would be a spot you'd want to touch this up. If you can't see the stitches because it's white on white, you can either change the background color by doing this little fabric choice, which is the little t-shirt, and change the background to a different color, or you can just temporarily change the color of your stitches. That'll allow you to see them better. So now you can see this, and hopefully I didn't choose too dark of a color, but you can see that this green goes way over into the black of the satin. And you can see the black of the satin and the yellow overlap some. That is the pull compensation for you. Right down here in the black, you can see that the yellow and the black overlap slightly. If they did not overlap slightly, you would definitely have a gap there. So that's what pull compensation is. And as I showed you, the opportunity to adjust that further in SewArt is there. And that's our design. I'm going to go ahead and zoom this back and give you another look at it with the green eyes instead of the white. Oops, view, texture. And remember that spot that I pointed out, there was a spot there and there's a spot there. Those would all need to be touched up. And I'm a big advocate of doing your touch-up, just looking at your designs in SewArt Pro without the texture on, touching things up, making sure that you're happy with things before you go to do a test stitch, because you can save yourself a lot of frustration, a lot of headache. Most people are not going to be real happy with that satin stitch. There is a way to change where your stitches are in SewArt Pro, and there's another video on that as well. So take a look at your designs after you've digitized them. Decide if it's acceptable. Right here, I'm not at all happy with even how that views with the texture. And right here, you can see there's a huge gap right there for whatever reason. So you need to go through and add or move some of your stitches. Right here, I would say you'd want to add a couple of rows and another spot right there. And that's just the way the program works. Sometimes that happens, but at least you have, here's another area right here. And when you're using those pattern fills, you can see the stitch points here are in between everything here. Make sure you follow that. If you were to fix this little area here, make sure you put your stitch points when you're adding stitches in the same area so that you continue your pattern. Thank you for watching this tutorial video. I hope that you have found it helpful and informative. You are invited to join the SewArt Digitizing group on Facebook. It's a great place to ask questions and get advice about using SewArt. A link to this group will be included in the description of the video on YouTube. Happy digitizing!